I think one of the most underlooked things has to be your messaging, because if you can have the right ads to the right audience, regardless of the platform, you're going to be making a lot of money and have a really great return on your investment.
Welcome, friends. I'm Adrian Sinclair, and this is the Adrian Sinclair Show, where I speak with interesting people about interesting topics, hopefully bring in some value to you, some pro tips that you can use in your own life. And today my guest is Evan Knox from Caffeine Media, and we'll be talking about marketing, investments, and he is an expert in that realm, building his company, and he's going to share how his journey led him to where he's at right now. So welcome to the show, Evan. Really appreciate you having here, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Adrian. I really appreciate it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. So we got connected, and I'm really intrigued by Caffeine Media and what you guys are doing. You guys are creating different ways of marketing and making it profitable. How did you start on your journey getting into this space?
So I grew up the son of an entrepreneur and the grandson of one as well. So I always loved business, especially small businesses and small business owners. And then when about maybe 3 or 4 years ago at this point, I was working at a nonprofit in Charlotte, and the part of my role is marketing. And so I just developed this marketing skill set from there, a lot of social media, advertising, designing the strategy. And I thought to myself, you know what? My dad's no longer with us. He had passed away. My grandfather was going to retire. And I thought, I can't help them anymore, but I can help other small business owners and entrepreneurs like them. So that's why I decided to start Caffeine Marketing. And I also kind of had in the back of my head as well, I really chose that direction for the company because I wanted to learn as much as I could about other companies so that one day when I was investing in other companies, I would have a good idea of how to grow them.
Right. And what you're doing is kind of an interesting combination of things, because you're running marketing, you're teaching people how to kind of survive in this very intense realm that we're in right now on the internet, where there's a lot of content, a lot of everything technically. And without marketing, you can have a great product, you can have great content, but without marketing, it may be just drowned out in the noise floor of everything being out there. And so you have that. So you have the marketing side, but you also are an investor. And so tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So my first partnership, and I don't know if the technical term is here. I've heard power investor before. I'm not sure if that's quite it, but my first partnership with somebody was maybe almost 2 years ago. And we were able to, by the following year, he sent me a text, and it was in August. He said, hey man, it's already the 5th of August, or it's only the 5th of August, and we've already 4x'd our revenue from the previous month that year. So I was like, I think I'm really on to something. And I enjoyed the partnership. And so recently in the last year, I've become a partner in I think at least 6 additional companies. I'm not trying to sound whatever there. There's probably somebody way more than me. But yeah, it's kind of hard to keep track of all of them at this point. But it's a lot of fun because basically in the difference between this investing side and the marketing side is that there's this like client relationship, whereas on the investing side, we become partners. And so it becomes like, hey, we're a team. Let's figure this out together. And let's make this thing really successful. So I love it. I mean, investing is, I love a big numbers guy, so it's a lot of fun.
With respect to marketing, what kind of trends have you seen happening? Because it's like, there's always the upping the ante kind of a thing in the marketing, right? It's like the new stuff, the trending stuff. What do you see right now if you would be starting a business from scratch, right? And you're an entrepreneur and you want to become part of this social thing and appear in it and not be just lost in the noise of all of it. What are some of the things that you advise your clients in terms of like marketing?
I think one of the most underlooked things has to be your messaging. And I think most people make themselves the hero of their own messaging. And what they should be doing is positioning themselves as the guide or the means to the end for somebody to get the outcome that they want. So whatever success looks like for them, or helping them avoid failure and letting them know what's at stake for that. So I think the biggest mistake is messaging that most people make. And I use a framework called StoryBrand. It's a 7-part process created by this guy named Donald Miller. In my opinion, it's one of the easiest ones to use because it's really simple for people to understand. It uses 7 principles of story that have been around for decades. And so I think, it may not be as trendy as like, oh my gosh, let's be on TikTok ads or something like that.
Yeah.
But I see that it works, because if you can have the right ads to the right audience, regardless of the platform, you're going to be making a lot of money and have a really great return on your investment. So I think that's one of the most underlooked things. Great copywriting is super important. I think that's something that is working these days. Something that's not working as much is organic reach on social, for companies, that is. So like personal brands, I still think that there's some opportunity there, especially with LinkedIn and some of these other platforms and podcasting. But for the company out there, it's hard to really get people interested in following a B2B company on Instagram or on Facebook. And the reach that you're going to get from either one of those is not that great. So I've advised a lot of my clients over the years to shift resources to initiatives that they can track. So if we can actually track the return on investment for our advertising, I love that, because then it becomes a math equation. Like I said, I love numbers, right? So if I know that every dollar that I spend, the most recent example is a medical company that we're working with, and every dollar that they're spending in ads with us, we're getting them at least 17 in return. And that's a really great
That is a great
metric.
ratio. Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically like you're putting money into a microwave and you're getting 17 back. So $1 and 17 back. So I like that. Once you're doing that and you've got all of those wheels working and spinning properly, then I think it's time to look at creating more of an intentional social media marketing strategy. But I like to have the paid stuff sorted first before investing in the other side. Or at least I try not to sell that service of organic social media marketing unless I've got all the other blocks in place, because the paid stuff will pay for the organic stuff.
So 2 questions. One is, why do you think that organic social media growth is not as, not working as well? And then tell me a little bit more about the method that you mentioned, like the storytelling type of marketing.
Yeah, I think it's probably a couple reasons. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist here. But one of them is probably that these companies, they're a business too, so they're trying to make a profit. So it's not really, at the end of the day, they don't have to care too much about whether or not brands are growing their reach online. What they're really interested is companies paying them to show ads. So Facebook, Instagram, they're not making any money out of you just having a Facebook page. They're really making money out of you paying them to show ads. So that makes sense to me. Kind of sounds like a conspiracy theorist. I don't know that they're necessarily lowering the reach of pages for that reason. But I will say that there is an abundance of content. There's more content out there than people are available to consume it. And so I think that if you can get the right product or service in front of the right person and highlight whatever pain point they're experiencing, then you've got a really great opportunity to see a great return on your investment in time and money. The flip side on the messaging thing, StoryBrand is awesome. I'll kind of break it down in a couple different parts here. I'm not going to go over all 7, but you should definitely check it out, or you can go to the Caffeine website to learn more, or StoryBrand.com. But it first starts with identifying who is the hero of the story. So who are they and what do they want? Let's go with the medical sales company again. They have a clinic owner, or let's just go with clinic owner, and they want a clinic that is professionally outfitted, and they don't have to think about outfitting their clinic, something like that. But the problem is that outfitting your clinic is expensive, and that feels intimidating because you can waste a lot of money on equipment that you don't need. And so where this company comes in is they provide consulting for each of these clinics in order to help them decide what is going to be the equipment that they need for their target market. So are they a traditional physical therapy equipment? Are they an athletic training facility? Are they a physical therapy equipment, or a physical therapist in a hospital? So they know all that. They're the expert in this field. They're the guide. They've already won the day here. First, we're identifying what it is they want and who they are. What is the problem that they're experiencing? How does that make them feel? So you've got an external problem and then an internal problem. The external problem is the thing they're literally experiencing. The internal problem is how they feel. And then you can get along the lines of like, hey, what's the philosophical problem? So what we believe is just plain wrong about this. And we said in that scenario with the medical sales company that outfitting your clinic shouldn't get in the way of treating patients. So we believe that, hey, this thing is cumbersome. It's admin stuff. You don't even need to worry about that. You need to get back to treating patients as soon as possible. So it's a philosophical belief that we can align their potential customers with them. so that they can see them as the authority. And then as the guide, what we can do in that scenario is we can establish the company as a guide with empathy and authority. So we're saying, hey, we get it. We know what it's like to be you. And we've been there, done that, and we can help you win the day.
Right.
Well, that's one way to say it. Fast forwarding to the end of the framework, like I mentioned before, you have an ability to paint a picture of success. So what does life look like on the other side of working with your business or buying your product or service? And then what's at risk if someone does not buy your product or service? So how is their life going to be negatively affected if they don't buy, they don't click the checkout button on your website?
Right.
And I guess all of this really boils down to what we call an aspirational identity. So the BMW and the Mercedes commercials and the Nike commercials are really painting a picture of what we want to perceive ourselves as. So if it's one of our clients is a real estate investment fund, so they're like kind of like private equity for real estate, and the aspirational identity for them is a smart or a savvy investor. And so we use that language a lot. Hey, we know that you want to be a savvy investor. So in order to get the results that you want, in order to have a great return that you need, you're going to need this framework that we've created or whatever.
Right. And the storytelling part of the marketing, do you think, I mean, you kind of painted the road, like why, like all these elements of what a company has to consider and focus on. The storytelling aspect of it, how important is that piece? We've all heard that, storytelling is important. That's how things travel, right? Like word of mouth, people are sharing things and parables. And even in the past, our ancestors, everything was kind of word of mouth. So it feels like it's like, almost in our genes. It's like that's how we kind of like to communicate. Do you think that still holds value right now in this kind of TikTok type of you got 6 seconds to create this hook to get someone interested world?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. I don't go on TikTok that much because it's extremely addictive and it sucks you in. But part of the reason why it sucks you in is because there's a bunch of little micro stories that happen really, really quickly. I remember one of the ones I watched was like about this girl who had one of her neighbors she thought was cute. So it's like this story of like her trying to not woo the neighbor, but like throws a note over, puts a sign on her window. Hey, call me at this number, come hang out. And she tells this story with each of these little TikToks. Right. It's extremely fascinating because the whole time you're wondering, oh my gosh, is she going to get the guy? Or you're also thinking, oh my gosh, what if her friends see this? Like, this is going to be crazy. This sounds like super creepy. She's putting this on the internet. So that's a story. And the reason why that's so effective in keeping our attention is because there's a well-worn path in our brains that we automatically go to and we start listening and paying attention to in stories. And it's why we can be talking to somebody at a cocktail party and our eyes glaze over after 2 or 3 minutes because they're talking about how awesome they are or whatever they're doing. I've been wanting to say this has been bothering me. I was in a conversation with a guy and he was like, oh, I was featured on the Forbes magazine cover and something, whatever. I don't want to give him away, but I was like, you are so pretentious. I was like, this is so weird. But the reason why I tune out with him is because he's not telling a story. He's talking about himself, and there's none of that connects to me in my life. It doesn't
connect, right?
Right. But Marvel knows how to tell a story. And so for 2.5 hours, I will sit there glued to the TV or the movie screen, if we ever get back to movies, and I will pay attention to that movie for 2.5 hours. And I will not once worry about, what else, how's my index fund doing or whatever, some dumb thing that I get distracted by. Right. So I think it's really important that we understand that we need to tell stories because it's going to help people pay attention. And people spend over 80% of the day or close to it, I forget what the exact statistic was, daydreaming. And the only time they're not daydreaming, they're engaged in a story. So our goal is to tell a story that people visualize themselves in so that we can sell them a product or service.
Wow, that's so interesting. Well, what I find really fascinating nowadays is that it seems that there's a dichotomy of in the space of marketing or even just content creation, where on the one hand, we're getting into this shorter and shorter and shorter time spans where you have you have a YouTube, long videos, then you have Facebook, there's like shorter clips, then you Instagram, you have your stories, and now you have TikTok and whatever else is going to come out after that. And it's just like, how, because there's only so much you can kind of shrink that story. So that was a very interesting example you brought in with the girl having like little TikTok episodes, and so you kind of build a story across multiple of these little things. So maybe that's how it's going to be. It's going to be little installments. So there's going to be tiny little episodes that are very short. But it is worrisome in a way, because where do we go with this shrinking attention span, where people are like, there's bajillion things that will never be able to consume every single day, every single hour, every single minute. Just there's so much coming out, and it kind of worries me. Like if we extrapolate these lines, like where do we go? At some point, it's just going to be like everything's going to be maybe just emojis. It's like, food, sex, smiley face, done, and it's like we're reducing ourselves almost to like this, I don't know, very responsive type of animal that just kind of like, I just need these tiny little bites because that's all my brain can handle. On the flip side, though, what I kind of see as well is, podcasts like this one, where you have a longer format, where you have the space where you can tell the story, can be engaging as well, and that kind of is growing as well. So I'm kind of conflicted to see like where maybe both things, maybe one is going to kind of interface with the other one, and it's going to be the short one that's going to bring you to the long one. I don't know. What do you think about what's going to happen in the future in that space?
Well, it's very interesting. We have the TikTok example, right? So it's I don't know how long the video is. It has to be less than 60 seconds with this girl's episodes. And each time she's like, tune back in and see like what happens next or whatever. So incredibly fascinating to how we visualize that. It's almost like when I go to read a book sometimes, I catch myself getting anxious because I'm like, I feel like I need to be doing something else. I can't pay attention to the book. I notice that I start to like phase out. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And I used to read books, like burn through them. So I noticed my own brain is kind of trained to just need immediate dopamine. Yeah, it really is. It's a dopamine addiction. I think it starts with mindfulness. I don't know that I see no reason at all that advertisers are going to just commit to long form just for the sake of people's mental health. I'm not calling for that. I think it comes down to the individual, and that person needs to be mindful. They need to be mindful of how they consume technology, how many times they touch their phone. There's all kinds of apps that you can install for that. There's all things that you can do to limit your screen time. And even just taking a day off technology. Like I try to do that once a month or close to it. And it's sometimes it feels like detox, which is extremely painful. Other times it feels so liberating to my soul, which is very interesting. But I love that you mentioned the podcast, because there's a podcast that I listen to that is really, really long, like even longer than some of your episodes. It's called the Jocko. Yeah, it's called the Jocko podcast.
Is that Jocko Willink?
Yeah, Jocko Willink. And I love that. I mean, it's very fascinating. I don't consume that while I'm at work. I don't consume that podcast between meetings, like I would if I had like 5 minutes between a meeting. I wouldn't start my podcast and then turn the podcast off.
Right.
I would do that with Instagram. But if I'm working on the house that weekend, I'm going to listen to that 4-hour podcast while I clean the garage and while I build that thing on the, fix that door or whatever. So I think it comes down to the medium, and I love having something in the background or while I'm driving or something like that.
That's interesting. You mentioned that because that's kind of how I am. So it's interesting. Maybe the world is going to be both. It's going to be a hybrid of like, this is for like your short little things, gaps in between. I think it's sad because with those kind of micro content things, you get so addicted. That's why, like you said, like TikTok, so addicting. And then quickly that's what your brain wants, like those little dopamine hits. And you feel exhausted in a way because like your brain is constantly being stimulated, and what's more, and it's exhausting. Maybe that's part of like why people are either stressed out or more anxious, because it's just like constant barrage. It's like they're saying that the cortisol, a stress hormone, it's not bad in itself because it's needed when you have a peak of like some kind of a stressful situation. So we can handle like this massive amplitude, this massive peak with it. But if you just dose it constantly, stress, then your body is basically just really not even shutting down. It's just like it's overwhelming to it because it wasn't meant to be like that. It wasn't meant to be done like constantly. So maybe the same thing is happening with dopamine when you're like, you're literally ODing on this micro content. So, but going back to the long format, it's those long. It's like when you were doing some of the chores or things like that. You know, like I found myself, I'm listening to Joe Rogan. I always bring this example. Joe Rogan talking to Paul Stamets. And it was just such a fascinating conversation. And I'm doing something, I'm building something in the garage, having, a blast. And it was like a 3-hour podcast. And then when it was done, I was like, I want more. It was just, So yeah, so I think you nailed it. I think it's the key to these formats is dependent on how do we consume them and when. So short ones for this, long ones when we're doing something else, longer drive maybe, or commute to work, or just doing something around the house that you kind of want to be still doing something interesting while you're doing like your chores or what have you.
Yeah, and it almost, sometimes we'll have a conversation as a family if we feel exhausted or we feel tired. Like if it starts to become a normal conversation of like, hey, if it's me or my wife, hey, I'm really tired right now. It's like, well, how mindful are you of technology right now? Because a lot of the times, me or her will be listening to an audiobook while we do stuff, or listening to long podcasts like I was talking to you. And our brain never has a time to rest. And so I'm going to mess this statistic up, but it's not far off. I think it was like 3% of your body weight is your brain, but 30% of your calories are burned from your brain. So your brain is like your hungriest organ, and it burns the most calories. And if you don't give it an opportunity to rest, then you're going to be exhausted at the end of the day.
Right.
And you may not have done anything, but it also is part of the reason why there's tons of people that will outwork me and are 10 times smarter than I am and be a better entrepreneur. So it's not really like that. I feel less like innate competition. Well, I like an animosity towards other entrepreneurs because I'm partners with a couple of them. But I do think to myself, I'm a young guy, but I'm not worried about the next generation. Because in some ways, I'm like, they're so addicted and they're so like just sucked into their phone. I can run circles around these guys. You know what I mean? Or gals, and some of them can run circles around me. But I don't know. I just don't. Sometimes I think to myself, I'm like, oh, dude, I could totally I can turn this thing off and I can not check my phone for notifications. I can get stuff done. Right. Whereas I don't think most people have that mindfulness thing or whatever. So
it's an enormous time consuming machine. Everything is vying for your attention and they're pulling out all the stops. I find myself, I literally at this point, I don't even park my phone right next to my bed. I just put it in a different room. I put the charger and everything in a different room. I don't want this to be even accessible. I don't want that hand to just kind of like whoop, grab it in the morning. What do you do before you open up your eyes and really, get into like, all right, what's happening in the world? And you're just sucked in right away. You don't have that time to kind of ease your way in, meditate, whatever sets your tone for the day. And that's why I just banned it from my bedroom. Like my wife is still not there, but it just has to be separate because it's just too easy. It's kind of like cheat foods at home. If you want to get in shape and you want to get yourself whatever you have whatever cheat foods that you shouldn't have there, there's impulse. Like something happens and boom, you're going to be like, your head is going to be in a jar, squeezed in and you're going to just pig out. So yeah, you just have to remove those things from you. But it's difficult, right? It's very difficult because especially if it's part of your business, like you and marketing, this is your bread and butter. So what do you do to kind of keep that balance?
It's fascinating you asked that because I was literally thinking about that. So we just bought a house. And we were minimalist, so we have not so we have nothing. We don't have nothing, but we have less than the normal person. And so for us, we were like, we just told the people that announced, we're like, just leave whatever you don't want to take with you. Like we'll deal with it. And so there's some stuff that they left that we're like, that's not our style, so we're gonna sell it. And so I downloaded Facebook Marketplace and Facebook that had Facebook Marketplace and a couple other apps. But before that, 2-3 weeks ago, I had a pretty long stint where I didn't have any of those platforms on my actual phone. And so I'm in a unique position where I'm not the one creating a lot of the social media content on Instagram, because this is the only one that I really need that app to do. Every Facebook, LinkedIn, all of these other ones can be done via my desktop. And so I just said, you know what, I'm just going to cut them all out. And if I want to look at Facebook, I'll go on my desktop, which is not really a desktop, it's a laptop. But the other thing is I have this thing called, because I do use Facebook for my business probably 30 times a day, if I'm checking ads or reports or whatever. But I got a Google Chrome plugin that's called a newsfeed eradicator. And so I don't get sucked into the newsfeed on my desktop. So I really am, once I have this, I gotta sell that last item and take these things back on my phone, because I have gotten re-addicted to it. It's no question. So that's some of the stuff I do. And then I also don't have it in the bedroom, like you mentioned. It does actually help me get up in the morning. So if I set my alarm and it's in the other room, eventually, I have a really funny story. Actually, I have to tell this. So my wife had just had a baby. This is we only have one.
Oh, congrats.
Thanks. This is maybe the first one, like not the first child, but the first night back that we were back as a family. And I was getting up before everybody else. My wife normally gets up before me. She gets up before 4 a.m. I get up before 5. And I thought I was like, a little crazy, but she's on a whole nother level.
Wow.
And so this day though, she just had a baby, so she's going to sleep in, rightfully so. And my alarm goes off. And I think to myself, I got to get up and get my alarm off before I wake Missy up and before I wake our new kid up. And so I shoot out of bed. And this has never happened in my life before or after. My legs were asleep. I've never had this happen. And I completely was unable to stand up. And so I shot out of bed. I proceeded to try and stand up on my feet. It was pitch black, so I couldn't see anything. And I slammed face first into the carpet. And then I was like in so much pain. And my wife she said she woke up and wasn't sure what happened, but just like went back to bed. And I crawled into the living room to grab my phone to turn off the alarm, because the alarm is still going off and I still wanted to not wake anybody else up. But my legs were asleep, so I couldn't stand up. I crawled all the way to the alarm, finally turned it off. But other than that, it's perfect, because I actually have to get up, and that movement of getting up actually helps me get out of bed. I'm worthless. If that phone is on my bedside table, I will not get up. I will somehow hit snooze, unaware that I even hit it, or just turn the alarm off. So I do love that idea. And this is less technology mindfulness, but I like to wear blue light blocking glasses. I like to have the TV off and the phone put away by at least 7:30, preferably 7. I'll do stretching and some breathing exercises before we go to bed. We'll try to go to bed before 8. So
sounds like you read a book about this. All these key points that you hit on are like the top, or some kind of an article about this. Those are like the top tips for everyone. Make sure that you don't have that screen in front of your face. That's why you got that. The amber filters at night to kind of help your brain not get stimulated with blue light and all of those things. I think it's a huge thing to do to help yourself by removing those electronics from your room. Get that alarm to go off in another room. In fact, there was this alarm that I wanted. I was so close to buying it. There's this alarm that you can buy. It's like a little ball that's parked on top of this base, and literally the thing shoots up. It's an alarm clock, right? It shoots up and it literally will roll all over the place. So you have to get up to physically get this thing, park it back in order to turn it off.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't get up, you got to do what you got to do. You know what I mean? But I'm so disoriented when I wake up anyway that my wife and I have different alarms. They're both iPhone alarm settings.
Right.
We've talked about this numerous times. I don't know the difference. And so every morning, because I wake up to her alarm before she does, and like I said, she gets up an hour before I do, which is fine. I don't care. I go back to sleep almost immediately. But I have to reach over and feel if she's in the bed, because I don't know whose alarm it is. So I'm like, oh, she's not there. It's probably my alarm.
Yeah.
And so that's my turn to get up now. So I do that every morning, and maybe one day I'll know what alarm is, but I would just be very disoriented if that was me. If I had to like get up and find a ball on the ground somewhere, I'd be like, everybody would be up before I could find it.
Some people need that because it's a process. For my wife, getting up, it's a ramp up. It's not like, okay, I'm up, let's go. It's more of a 3 snoozes, and then it just kind of slowly, kind of rolling out of the bed. And and caffeine is definitely part of that lifestyle as well. To it's the other side of the equation. So tell me more about caffeine marketing, and how did you start it, and why caffeine? What's the story behind that? Since we touched on caffeine.
Yeah. So I kind of mentioned a little bit like the backstory of my grandfather and my dad and stuff like that. But I eventually came to the name of caffeine. I started the company, just created a name, didn't love it, knew from the day one that I was not going to keep that name. But I just needed something. I think a lot of entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs, probably less entrepreneurs, but like would-be entrepreneurs, think too much about something and just get stuck in like, what's the name going to be? What's the colors? Just
overanalyzing.
You just got boots. Yes. So boots on the ground, create something. So I just created something, and I was thinking about it for months. Like, what do I want to call it? What's it going to be called? And I was sitting there drinking a cup of coffee as I was trying to figure it out. And I thought, man, entrepreneurs, like business owners, business leaders, we were running on caffeine in order to make stuff happen. I feel like it resonated with people. And so that's why I went with it. And it also kind of fuels business growth. Thought that was clever, but I just thought it was too cute for me to roll with.
Yeah, it is. And I am like that too. I'm like overanalyzing. It's analysis paralysis. You're just spending too much time like, all these different things they want to, and sometimes it's just got to pull the trigger and just go with it. And you can always change things in the future maybe, or spin off or merge. Like if you focus too much on that and not on like the core of the business, then you're just like, you're going to be in an imbalance.
100%.
Yeah. So what is, if you would describe yourself in 3 words, I mean, as an entrepreneur, an investor, you kind of have your hands in a lot of different things. And when you think of yourself, and if someone would ask you like, hey, describe yourself in 3 words, what would that be to you?
If someone else is describing me, they would probably say intense. I would hope that they would say, I'm not going to count these, but I would hope that they say like loving or humble. Those would be my dream list. I can't say if they say those, but that would be a dream. But definitely intense, gritty, and probably explorer. I feel like I just have this. I was talking to a guy who was a potential business partner. This was the Forbes guy. Or no, wait, this is a different guy. But similar attitude.
I was gonna say, like, he got you with the Forbes, man. I was the Forbes cover magazine, man.
Yeah. Well, it was I think he said founder. I don't want to say it was Forbes. It was founder magazine. He was on it. Whatever. But this guy also had a similar attitude, and we were on the phone, and he was like, "Well, I'm the visionary strategist or whatever." Which is like, he used the term within EOS, which is basically like the visionary integrator. But the way that he said it was like, I'm going to tell people what to do and I'm not going to do anything. And the way that he said it. And I'm a strategy guy through and through, but I can still get stuff done. I think of like that whole explorer thing. I'm not a head in the clouds kind of guy, but I'm also not a details person. I like to think that I can pull a little bit from both. I can understand strategy, see it from a really high point of view, and maybe that's it.
Right.
I don't create stuff from thin air. That's not my skill set. I've got friends that are incredibly creative that just pull something out of nothing. Whereas I feel like I have the ability to see a really big, like start to finish in beginning to end vision for something, and pull the pieces together or pull the people together and make it happen.
Right.
So yeah, say explore.
I think the explorer, the growth aspect is so important. And I believe that everybody has that innately, that they want to get better and different. Some people are just happy where they are in terms of like, hey, here's my little bubble, here's my little space, I have everything under control and I don't need anything else. And that's fine too. But I believe that most people are like lifelong learners, and they do want to explore, they do want to find new things, they do want to incorporate and synthesize new things together because it's fun. And I think it gives you a sense of, achievement and personal development, and those are key elements that I think are really important, in especially when you're an entrepreneur, because you can't be very static. So let's talk about that a little bit. You as a entrepreneur, building your business, what are some of the key things that you found that are, the ground truth to you in terms of running a business? Like, as you kind of grew through your path and grew your business, what are the key kind of characteristics that you go back to saying, like, these are essential things that everyone, or like most entrepreneurs, should have in order to even have a chance at a success, whatever that is?
A couple of things come to mind, and I'm not saying that I'm sitting here saying, well, I'm perfect at these, but I would say that the moments that I exhibited these characteristics were the times that I found the most success, or was a catalyst to finding success.
Yeah.
I think you have to have a couple of things. One, if you are an entrepreneur, you have to have a comfortability with risk and uncertainty that the average human does not.
Right.
To me, it does not feel scary. I mean, almost at all. I mean, we've got all these different moving parts and companies. I'm trusting people to do certain things. I've got partners. There's lines of communications that we have to make everything work. And there's definitely like a strategy to all that. But really, there's a lot of risk involved. I mean, my name is attached to, I don't know how many documents, you know what I mean? And so you just have to be comfortable with like losing everything. I'm not saying that you should risk a bet. Everything should be educated, but you have to have way more ability to be resilient. And I listened or read some sort of statistic that most entrepreneurs experience childhood trauma. And it was the childhood trauma that enabled, if they were able to get through that, they had an unusual ability to overcome stuff as well as deal with uncertainty and chaos. And so I personally have experienced, my dad was a narcotic growing up. And so that was really hard. He wasn't all of my life, but at certain times he struggled with it. And so that was really super hard. I mean, just point blank. And my parents got a divorce. It was super challenging, but it was that stuff that built a foundation that enabled me to deal with all of this risk and me just not care. And I'm like, all right, whatever. If I made it through that as a kid, like, this is really not a big deal. If somebody signs a proposal or if they don't, if we lose the sale, they don't. This person did that. The customer did this, whatever. So first characteristic has to be that resiliency, ability to mitigate, or just be comfortable with risk. The second thing I would say is grit. It does require a lot of hard work. I was talking to a guy, I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm getting conversations mixed here. I think this was some other partner, not like a potential partner. And he was talking about how he can work circles around people that work like 3 hours a day, which I was like, I totally 100% agree with. I love having a hyper optimized day, but I also don't believe in working from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's not my vibe.
Right.
So I know what my threshold is, and I'm not about overworking myself, but I do think that you have to have this ability to get through stuff and to keep working even when you don't feel it. And even though no one's going to see you working. And I think a good example of that is like when you're getting the work done and you go, what else could I do? Maybe I could post a picture of me doing the work, some sort of Instagram. But no, that's like not what you should be doing. You should be doing the work, like getting the work done, not I'm an entrepreneur working late nights, whatever. No, you're not. You're sitting there on Instagram. Yeah. It's like, what even is that? So I'm probably making somebody sad there. So that's not my intention to offend you. So we've got ability to withstand risk. We've got grit. And then the last one I would say is humility. And I'm not saying that I do this one perfectly at all, but I do think that the entrepreneurs, not all entrepreneurs and not even billion-dollar and multi-million-dollar companies have a humble person. That's not always the case. I wish it was. But I would say a lot of really successful entrepreneurs are humble. And they have the ability to empathize with people on their team. And they understand how it feels to be on the other side of them. And the world is not just about them. And they care about other people. And they don't think that they are the end-all, know-all. And I've seen so many small businesses that I work with Caffeine Marketing that the business owner thinks that they know best. And they don't listen to their team. They don't listen to us. They don't listen to anybody. And it is ultimately the thing that keeps them small. It keeps them stuck below 7 figures or low 7 figures, is because they will not listen and they are not humble and they are not teachable. So some people just get, I don't know if they get lucky, They just kind of make it happen, even though they're not humble. But I think it's a great characteristic if you can lean on other people and say, okay, what do you think? All right, how am I wrong here? Explain that to me. And just care about other human beings. So
right.
Resiliency to risk, grit, and then humility would probably be the big three. I
like it. For me, I recently kind of, my little acronym is FPGA. So faith in what you're doing, faith that you can achieve it. Without that, if you don't have that, it's like it's one of the pillars. Purpose, like where are you going with this, right? What is the end goal? So FPG is gratitude. This is kind of like gratitude and humbleness in one sort of category. Be grateful, like what you have. We're oftentimes chasing these ideals of like what a happiness is or what that success means, and you think it's as if you're climbing like Mount Everest, like you made it to the top and you're there as if it's a location, whereas most of the time it is kind of like what's happening along the way. And then A is action. Nothing happens without action. And action is key. It's like you can sit on your butt, you can kind of theorize and plan everything out, but until wheels are in motion and you do something, nothing is going to happen magically. And so those are kind of like the key top things for me to kind of that I follow. But I'm going to incorporate yours as well. I mean, there's obviously a lot, and the key of it is how do you actually even implement all of that? That's the key, because we are like book smart. There's a lot of content that you can kind of ingest, so you have knowledge. But until you implement it and have like habitually doing those things to execute things, it's just kind of knowledge. It just kind of sits there. It's good to know. What do you do to implement? How do you help yourself? Like, let's say you read a book and it's like, wow, all these different things. I love it. They tell me what to do. How do you kind of make yourself do these things consistently? Because that's what it's all about, right? Execution.
I think I have more information available. We all have more information available, but me specific, I'll just talk for me. I have more information available to me than I have time or energy to execute. So I certainly do not lack resources. Somebody was telling me the other day, they're like, man, if we could just, find somehow figure out how to do this. I'm like, why would you try to figure out how to do it? Like, somebody's already written a book, made a YouTube video, something, you know what I mean? Right. So just short step that. So there's plenty of information out there. I just took adaptations of other people's businesses that I really liked. So at first I thought of Gary Vee when I started my own company. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be like Gary Vee. And then I heard another friend talking. He was like, hey, here's the price structure I do for my company. And I was like, I want to do that. And then I learned a lot. And then I had some own experience. And then I thought, how am I going to structure my company with employees and staff? And I listened to another guy talk about it. So it's all these things that I've accumulated over time that I've thought, I like that. I don't like that. I like that. I don't like this. But how do I consume content? I do listen to podcasts. I don't listen to that many business podcasts anymore, but it's on rotation for sure. And then I love reading books. I think I feel overloaded. So like I know at least 5 different systems to run a company at this point. Like kind of like in a Mac has an operating system. I've learned 5 different systems to operate a company at this point. And so when I read like Clockwork, for example, by Mike Michalowicz, really great book. I'm already familiar with EOS and 40X and a bunch of other things. So at some point, it just becomes a different way to do the same thing. And so I like to try stuff out, but I've worked for organizations that have this shiny object syndrome, and they go, oh, we're going to read this book. Everybody's going to read this book. We're going to do this thing. And then a month from now, the leader reads another book. And we all do this thing. And
right.
They never actually commit to something. So I am always game to learn more about messaging, but I love the StoryBrand framework. I always am game to learn more about how to structure systems and processes, but I really like Clockwork and EOS. I'm always game to learn more about leadership. I don't feel like that's ever really, it's like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Like you don't ever master that. You're just always learning more about leadership and self-awareness and stuff like that. So I do listen to some of those podcasts. But as far as like marketing and advertising goes, like I do kind of like a monthly dive. If I'm like, okay, I'm really unfamiliar, for example, on Houzz, Houzz, the platform for like furniture, interior design, all that stuff. We have 2 companies that I think would work great on selling on Houzz, but I've never done it before. And so I'm like, okay, I really need to do a deep dive and familiarize myself with this before I ask my team to start doing this and figuring this out. So I like to kind of look at it every month or every other month, but I don't like to just stay. There was a season when I was really developing a base level knowledge where I would check like all the latest blogs on whatever industry subject. And I don't. It's not to say I know it all. I definitely don't. But I'm just okay not knowing some things and running into other things because I've got this arsenal of tools that I've accumulated over time that I can use. So that's probably why I don't listen to as many. It's because I feel like.
Is there one that you still have as a sort of still go to in terms of like listening still consistently, or did you just rotated things out and you kind of like get in and then kind of go back out and it's kind of like a ebb and flow? Or do you have one that's kind of like, here's my sort of like go to every week that I that I listen? I know you mentioned Jocko, but is that again on a consistent basis, or do you feel like you're kind of like flowing in and out?
I flow in and out of Jocko's podcast, but I consistently listen to the Whoop podcast, WHOOP, and shout out to any people that wear Whoop. It's a wearable device. It's not a watch. It tracks a bunch of different metrics, but basically it teaches you to understand how your body is recovered or not recovered, or how much strain you're putting in your body. So I listen to their podcast because you have all these successful entrepreneurs and athletes. And I like to listen to people that are just not business people, but also athletes or just the best in their field. And it teaches, they share about how they optimize their body based off the data that they have. So I've learned a lot of that stuff that I mentioned around sleep and health and performance hacking. I've learned from the Whoop podcast or studies that Whoop has published. Like this thing can even predict if you have COVID-19, if you've been diagnosed with COVID-19, which is like super cool. It's like at least 75% accurate, if not more, for indicating if you've tested positive for COVID or not, without even like sticking anything in you. It's just based off your variable heart rate and your resting heart rate and your respiratory rate. So it's really cool. So I love that. I listen to that podcast for like performance stuff. I also listen to my church's podcast because faith is really important to me, and my relationship with Jesus is like, preferably, I'd like to consider it number one in my life, and family and stuff as well. And then from there, leadership, I do like the Jocko podcast for leadership stuff because he's a different perspective than the normal faith leaders that I listen to. And then, I don't even know if he's faith or not, but he's just different perspective. He's a military guy. Right. And then I would say that marketing tactics, I'll occasionally listen to like a Gary Vee podcast. Sometimes like, it really depends. If somebody's like, sometimes I'll listen to CrossFitters. If it's like a specific niche or niche, recently I've looked at like the fitness industry and tried to see what can I learn from the fitness industry that I could apply to all my other businesses. So I like to just kind of get a different perspective than what I hear day to day.
Right. No, thanks for that insight. I'm asking because it's kind of interesting to see how a successful entrepreneur is running and balancing all of that, because there's not enough. There's definitely more information that we can chew on. So we kind of pick our things. But sometimes some people, I find that they have a kind of an underlying thing that maybe is the baseline for them, and not because it provides massive amount of new information that kind of keeps you on the edge business wise, but it gives them that kind of place for respite where it just kind of centers them, or brings back, just kind of like plugs them out of that kind of high churn, high fast paced environment of like this constant knowledge being shot at you at light speed. So that's why I was asking. But interesting thing that you mentioned about the little wearable that you have. I just had on my show a CEO, founder of this company called Illumiview, which is she's a psychologist, and she kind of marries the digital technology and psychology. And when you said that it can predict all these different things, that's what they're doing in terms of like your mindfulness state, right? So like they kind of use it again, bringing in those metrics and trying to figure out like your mind state. Are you depressed? Are you stressed right now? They even saying that it can actually, the data that they're collecting and predictively can tell you like you're about to have this, or like this is like it kind of like that onset of like before you're going to have some kind of a stressful situation. So very interesting stuff. I'm going to have to check it out, and maybe bring him on the show over here and talk about it a little bit.
Yo, Whoop is awesome. I think the guy's name is the founder is Will Ahmed. So yeah, if you can get him on, he's great.
Yeah.
The other content thing that I would say I listen to a lot is YouTube, but it's less about business and more about finance. So for whatever reason, I don't think I've listened to a single finance podcast. However, I do listen to a lot of finance YouTube videos. So
Such as what?
just put them on my TV and I'll listen to like Graham Stephan, sometimes Dave Ramsey, just different perspectives on finance and stuff like that.
Right. Switching back to marketing and your bread and butter, what do you predict is going to happen in the future in terms of marketing? I know it's like this is you don't have a crystal ball to be definitive, but I'm just curious based on the trends because when I talk to subject matter experts like yourself, you've seen enough, you've been around, you've seen the trends, you've seen how things are shaping and changing. And if you were going to place a bet, what would you say is going to happen like within the next year or two or whatever the span of time you want to talk about in terms of like, is it going to be more of the same? Is it going to be shifting? Do you see any new ideas or new trends that you see will be coming down the line in terms of like how marketing is going to change?
So I think messaging is still important. I'd say that's becoming more and more apparent. The second thing that I would say is that direct marketing or figuring out direct marketing is more important now than it's ever been. Up to this point in the world, really, we've only had brand marketing available. So you've not been able to track from beginning to end. I showed somebody an ad, they saw this other ad, they got this email, and they finally bought our product or service. You're not able to track all that. But direct marketing enables you to scale a company, and it becomes a simple math equation. And so if you can do math, you can scale a company, it's obviously more complex than that. But for the most part, that's what you have. Whereas my grandfather would place ads in the Atlanta Symphony, and then a billboard, and then a newspaper, and he had no way to track what was working and what wasn't.
Right, no metrics.
No metrics. And he probably could have done something to the effect of like, call this number if you sell a billboard, or call this number if you sell the newspaper. But even at that point, I don't know, they're probably going to go look at the phone book if they remember their name. So I'm just saying is that we're uniquely positioned right now. If you're a small business owner, if you can find a partner, a business partner, a agency that can actually get you results and not just make things look good. If you can find somebody who can actually figure out your direct marketing, then you can scale your company to infinity and beyond, because it really is the world is your oyster, and you can scale a company like never before. So I just see that as more and more important, because I see these small business owners that I talk to that are just tired of people taking their money. They're just tired of people going, all right, it's this many impressions, or you're getting this many clicks, or your website cost 30 grand and we don't know if we get results from it or not. So I think people are just getting more and more tired of that. We're used to getting results. We're used to push button results. And so I think that direct marketing and figuring that out, which direct marketing, I'm sorry, I haven't defined this already, but direct marketing is the ability to show someone an ad, or it's an ad that is targeted at getting them to directly buy it right then, very soon, whatever. Whereas brand marketing, the goal is just to get your brand out there. It's just to make people aware that you exist. Direct marketing is sales. That's the goal. Brand marketing is just make people aware of you. Brand marketing is important, but mainly for Fortune 500 companies, not for small businesses.
Right, because small businesses have to survive on transactions versus like, hey, this is how I make you feel. Small companies were like, I have to sell this many widgets to survive, so the business kind of goes on. Tell me, what do you think are like the biggest mistakes that these small entrepreneurs are doing in terms of growing their business? Because they are being pulled in so many directions, right? You have the exposure of the internet kind of like sitting on your shoulders, where it's like, you got to do this. No, this works. No, this works, and then you're kind of chasing everything all over the place. And from your kind of unique perspective, what do you see small companies and entrepreneurs are doing wrong, and then learning on those hard lessons? And hopefully, so what do you think biggest mistakes out there for small entrepreneurs in marketing?
In my head, I was going to say a lot, but I don't. That doesn't feel quite hopeful or optimistic or assuming the best of.
Bring on like top 3 or top 5. That's kind of like fresh. Yeah.
So anyway, I didn't mean. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that as a joke because small business owners employ 50% of the of our economy. I don't think they, or somewhere close to that, or they're 50% of businesses. I think they're 90% of the businesses in the U.S. economy, and they supply 50% of the jobs. I think that was the stat that I read, pretty confident. And so small business owners are to be commended, no question.
Right.
So I'm not trying to harp on them, but there's a couple things that I have noticed, and I have yet to find out a better phrase for it, so I'm sorry, but this is kind of like the real estate lawyer syndrome that I see. They make plenty of money. So lawyers and real estate agents, they make plenty of money, right, but they are afraid to invest back into their company, and they just don't trust anybody. And a lawyer will get in this headspace of like, well, this is my hourly rate. I charge $300 an hour as a lawyer, and so I don't understand why you're charging 20 grand for a website. They cannot see a value-based pricing, and so therefore they stay small because they don't trust anybody to deliver value for them. They just see this one framework. They won't see anything else. The real estate agent has like this, I have real estate agents that I really like. I mean, went to school with some, I've got friends that are real estate agents. So I'm not like hating on real estate agents. I do like them. And I've got lawyers that are, I've got lawyers that are friends too, so it's fine. But I mainly see this with these two categories. The real estate agent also has like this scarcity mindset. They make plenty of money, okay? Like the house that we bought, I'm not gonna say the exact amount because you could reverse engineer the amount, but like they made a lot of money. And I was like, golly, I wish somebody just went into my website and I talked to them 4 times and then they just took this much money from me, you know what I mean? Or they just gave me this much money. So they make plenty of money, but yet they're scared to invest back into their own business sometimes. So when it comes to building a sales funnel or marketing or messaging, they have this fear mentality, and they won't hire other people to do things for them. And so we've mentioned a little bit before is that you have to have trust with people in order to scale. You have to, I hire fairly quickly, but I also let go pretty quickly. I don't want to sound generic, but there is kind of like a 3 strikes and you're out kind of deal. Right. But I'm very candid. And often, I think there's only been one time where I've had to say, all right, this is it. It's time to go. No longer a fit. Every other time, I've had a very direct initial conversation. Hey, this has to change when I'm talking to employees or team members or contractors or whatever. Hey, this has to change. Here's the exact things we're talking about right here. X, Y, Z. Has to change. Second time around, same thing. This has to change. Blah, 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 whatever. And the third time around, I'm like, hey, this has to change. I need you to change this, or this is not a good fit anymore. And they self-select out by the third time. So I'm very quick to hire, but also to present the opportunity for them to walk out if they've kind of realized that it's not a good fit for them. And so I think it's really important for business owners, real estate agents, every small business owner, anybody that has less than 50 employees. Really, I'd say 50 employees, you've figured out something to letting people do stuff. But if you're less than 10 employees, you could still do that and delegate. And you shouldn't delegate. You should empower other people to make decisions for you. Right. And so we've got team members that we say, hey, it's like a property management company. So we've got a property management company, and it's like anything under $500, just do it. Don't even ask us. Just like take care of it. Whatever the tenant needs under $500, just take care of it. Mm-hmm. So there's a certain threshold that you have to train people to think the way that you would think, value the things that you would value. Sometimes you have to say, hey, here's the way I would think about this. What decision would you make? And that is a thing that keeps a lot of small businesses small and keeps them from scaling. It's not trusting people and not being willing to invest back into their company. Right.
Man, there's just so many golden nuggets that you just mentioned over here. That's just so awesome, man. I hear that from other successful companies. They let go people because not only if they don't support the mission, that's one thing. But if it could be worse, it could be like a cancer in a way that they will affect other people, and now you have a larger problem because other staff that you had are infected sort of by this mindset, and then that kind of impacts the company. So that's why they kind of let them go fast. If it's not a good fit, I'm sorry, you just have to go. What do you see in terms of like what's happening right now with COVID? I mean, because this brings in an interesting dynamic, right? Right now, where we have small companies, businesses going out of business because of COVID, and so there's going to be even more fear, right? And with companies to kind of trying to invest in themselves to grow. What do you see out there happening, and how can these small business owners kind of like change their mindset maybe?
Well, I will say I do not have a fully complete picture. I do have more data points than most people in regards to small business economy, because I've got hands in a lot of businesses and work with a lot of different types of companies. But sometimes it's confusing to me. I'll just say we bought the house, whatever, and there was this gym that they closed because of COVID, and I went in there and I was buying some of the gym equipment that they were selling at a discounted rate because their gym was closing, and I'm like, you didn't close because of COVID. Like, there were other stuff. Like, I walked in and I'm like, there was other decisions that were made that I can tell. I mean, just as a business owner walking into another business, I'm like, you didn't need that. You didn't need that. You didn't need that. That looks bad. Like all this stuff, which is, I'm not trying to be judgmental. It's just like
the process
being a business owner.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a thought process, right? I mean, the guy's friendly. It's all good. But there was decisions up to that point that led you to the point where this was the straw that broke the camel's back, or this was the excuse that you needed to not be in business anymore.
Right.
So that's not all businesses, but I just want to point that out, that I don't think that some of this stuff is isolated to COVID, because there is plenty of funding. You've got all kinds of loans that you have access to as a small business owner. You also have like the PPP program, which is like pretty extensive. If you're a small business owner and you can pay your people like 75% of their salary, and you're going to get 100% forgiveness on that, that's a deal. You can keep paying them. You know what I mean? And that's not to say that can't work for everybody, but I don't know. I just think that there's ways to make that work. And another one, and I think I do have some help here. I could provide some help, but the other one that comes to mind is there's a person who we might still work with, but they had an opal company, or they have an opal company. They don't like harvest opals, but they sell opals at trade shows, which is cool. I'm a certified gemologist, so I dig myself some cool jewelry. And they sell their sets of opals, their custom jewelry at these trade shows. They knew that they needed an online store. Literally, her words. We knew that we needed to do this 2-3 years ago. We never did it. We never spent the money to do this. And then no one could have seen this coming. 100%, I agree. But now all the trade shows are canceled for the next year, at least. And so they have no revenue coming in, and they have none for the foreseeable future. But they could have made the decision to diversify their revenue streams in order to make that happen. So it's almost like the business owner who's killing it on Amazon, and they're selling like FBA, fulfillment by Amazon, but they're not building their own website, and they're not adding additional channels like Walmart or House or whatever. If they're not doing those things, there's prep work, that's stuff that is necessary. I don't know. I think that if you've not done it yet, do that work. Do that hard work. But I have some good things here. If you have human resources, and you have some cash flow still available, and you're not really, really struggling, even if you're a gym owner, maybe you can have you can keep your people employed, but you can actually redeploy them to create online content. So your 6 personal trainers that you have on staff, why don't you have all 6 of them create, each a workout that day for the business, and like create this incredible YouTube page, or create an app and fulfill this app and pivot really quickly. So if you have human resources, redeploy your human resources. There's a jewelry store that we're talking to. We can overhaul their entire marketing for them during the season, because they have more margin than they know what to do with. They have plenty of cash reserves. They know that whenever they open back up, it's going to be fine. They just need to make sure that their entire marketing funnel is hyper optimized, their messaging is hyper optimized, their brand is hyper optimized, and so they can set themselves up for success as they go forward. So.
Yeah. You mentioned small businesses, not investing back in, and also being afraid of marketing, right? Because they may have been burned here because this company was pulling them here and pulling them there, and they're not sure how much money this is going to cost. What would you say to like small businesses that are in that place that when they are ready to maybe take it to the next level? And maybe even for those who are not, like just, because right now a lot of businesses were just butchered, and when this COVID wave hopefully goes away, and new entrepreneurs who want to jump into the market and start a business, will be afraid as well of like, well, I don't have enough money to do marketing or this and that, so it's going to be just me and two more people or something like that. What do you say to them to kind of to help them out, or maybe let them understand like how things work in the marketing space that you guys provide the services for?
Two things come to mind. One is businesses are at a discount right now. Like if you were considering starting a business from scratch, you could probably buy a business for little to no money. Like if you wanted to own a gym, there's so many gyms right now that are like for sale, and some of them will pay you to just take the company. So I subscribe to some like business for sale listings as an investor, and I'll look at them and like, oh, this business right here is for sale for $20,000. A business is for sale for $20,000. Which is crazy if you think about that. Like if you were to start, it's a franchise. If you were to start that franchise, you'd be looking at $500 to $1 million in cost to renovate that entire building. And they're selling it for $20,000. So
wow.
I'm not suggesting to buy it, because you have to have a certain amount of cash to kind of like withstand the storm here. And probably It's going to be a year or a couple months, but still, I mean, you could buy a business for $20,000. It's crazy. Yeah. The flip side, if you are wanting to invest back in your company, I just say I feel for you, because there's a lot of stuff to navigate. If you're a business owner, you didn't get into your business to do marketing. You got it to be great at your craft and serve and take care of people. So I feel for you. But I do think it requires some homework. You don't have to be the expert strategist. I'm not saying that you do. I think you need to find somebody who is, but you at least need to know a little bit. You need to understand a little bit about SEO. You need to understand a little bit about Facebook ads or whatever it is that you're looking for. And hopefully you find somebody that is not just a service provider of Facebook ads or Google ads or PPC. I would find somebody who's a marketing strategist, somebody who can build a marketing strategy for you so that it's profitable. Not that they don't sell social media content. You don't want that, because now you're putting on the strategy hat when you're not the strategist. You need a strategist to help you make marketing profitable. Same with your messaging. You need somebody to help you there. So there's a lot of snake oil out there. I'm not telling you to have paralysis analysis here, but I think have some conversations. Find somebody who cares about you in the business, not just wants to sell you a service, and kind of say, hey, if we were going to build a marketing strategy here, what would we do? Where have you seen that profitable for? What's the return that somebody like this? And I don't think anybody can tell you genuinely, hey, here's how much money you're going to get back. But like, hey, show me some examples of a return on investment that you've had with clients. And I think that those are the questions that you should be asking, not how much did you grow their social media? How many followers am I going to get? Those are all dumb questions. Not dumb. They're not the right questions to ask to scale your business.
Especially at the small scale of the business, right? Where the transactions, the revenue stream is paramount, right? Like you said, larger companies that want to kind of brand and manicure their brand image and all of that, they can they may care about that more than a small business, which has to pay bills, and survive month to month, day to day. Well, you mentioned messaging. What define how you mean messaging, because that's kind of like one of the things that is being utilized in marketing. How do you define it, and what does that mean?
And so in the StoryBrand community, we have this phrase that people buy products or services because of the words that they read or hear. So it's not because your website looks slick, which I think you do need a great looking website, but for a different reason. They're not going to buy it because your website looks awesome. They're going to buy it because of the words that they read or they hear. So when I think of messaging, I think of anything that's spoken or written on the page. I think it needs to have a cohesive messaging, and you're going to walk people through an exercise in memorization. So if we take that StoryBrand brand script that I mentioned before, or that messaging document or strategy that I talked about, we take that and we want to walk people through an exercise in memorization so that whenever they encounter the problem that we solve, we want them to immediately think of us. And then once like Home Depot is, I don't know why, I feel like Lowe's is probably cheaper than Home Depot. But at this point, like I'm just committed to the Home Depot. Yeah. I'm just committed to the Home Depot brand at this point. You know what I mean? It's partially because I'm so entrenched with their marketing. So I've heard so many of their little, like, I don't even know how to do their jingle right now, but there was a commercial on the radio, or me and my wife in the car or whatever it was, and I heard the like dun 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 dun, dun, dun like whatever their jingle is in the beginning of their thing, and I paused it and I looked at my wife and I was like, who is this? I mean, it's maybe a second, like dun 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 dun, and I paused it. She's like, who is it? She's like, Home Depot. So it's crazy. Little things like that, you can walk, get it done or something like that. I think that's like their slogan. So messaging's vastly underrated.
We talked about podcasting for you. You were thinking about doing a podcast. Just kind of briefly switch into that. Why would you want to start a podcast as a marketing company, or is it a personal endeavor that you want to do? I know we chatted about that. What is attracting you to do a podcast?
So from a strategic standpoint, I like the idea of building a personal brand. I also like the idea of growing in communication skills, becoming a better communicator. As a young guy, only 25, I think that there will probably be more times in my life where I have to better communicate with either teams or organizations or on a stage, whatever. So I think I could grow in that. I also like the added value or perceptive value of the brand. So if I did a podcast for my company, I've seen a lot of people leverage a podcast on behalf of their company as an added benefit or added value or an upsell for working with them. So it's like, hey, you want to be featured on the podcast? That's $1,000, $5,000, whatever. So I think it's a really interesting, but what I've noticed is that it's a really cool network of people who are extremely giving and I would say selfless and really willing to lend their time. I mean, you're one of them. Like I've met some really cool people through the podcasting network, and where I think they've, like I said, lots of advice, not enough time and energy to follow all of it. The most recent advice that I've gotten was, hey, go be a guest on 100 podcasts before you start your own. And that to me has been extremely enlightening. I never knew how much hard work, like I know that you do so much hard work to make this thing as awesome as it is. And so I've learned that among strategy, around structure. There's so many different types of podcasts. And so that's what's interested to me in podcasts and where I'm at so far in the process.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you're going to do it because you are talented and smart and definitely have a lot of knowledge to impart. And I think the awesome thing about what you're doing is like you're a great synthesizer of data from like various points of collecting. And I think that's where power comes in, because sometimes we are just so entrenched in like single mind of a single way of thinking. And and that makes us, there are some edge cases in which this just works well, but it makes you not as resilient. And I think through podcasting, you open yourself up, especially if you consider yourself as a lifelong learner, different perspectives from different people that you talk to. And if you are, synthesizing all of that together, then that just 10x's up for you, because you just can connect and create these new patterns of thinking that will just keep you pushing forward. And I think that's the value of podcasting with a lot of people. It's not only networking. Definitely networking is a huge thing in part of it, but it's just being open to different perspectives, things that you would probably never considered. I think that's one of the most valuable things that you can kind of help yourself with. And plus, like you said, communication skills. I mean, you already, I think, have that down because you're teaching, you have workshops, you're doing stuff to disseminate knowledge. But I think it allows you to kind of fine tune that. And at 25, man, you're hyper successful, man. So I hope you're going to do this podcast.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the encouragement. You reminded me of a podcast that I went on with a guy. He's a doctor. I don't remember his full name, but I don't want to say it wrong. But he was a doctor. He's a doctor of psychology. And I have this thing that it's kind of like, personally to me, it keeps me centered and grounded. And it's what matters 100 years from now. So what matters 100 years from now for me? So as I think about, and I'm sure you have like your own kind of isms like that, but to me, if I feel overwhelmed or I feel stressed or I'm unsure, I go back to, does this matter 100 years from now? Or the whole COVID-19 thing. Does this matter 100 years from now? Like just the fear, like living in the fear, like even if I died, does that matter 100 years from now? And to me, my faith, my relationship with Jesus is the most important thing to me, and my family and my friends. Those are the things that really matter. And I think and legacy probably for some people is important. And so I said that to him, and I said that, and I did in no way. I just say this, like, I was so challenged by what he said to me after this. He was like, and he was talking about like he's a black male, upper 40s, so way more wise than me because he's older than me. And he said, I think that that's true. He's like, but I would be careful because this racial injustice may not be important to some people 100 years from now, but it is important to me, and it is important to all these other people. So in that moment, my eyes were open, and I was like, that does matter 100 years from now. You know what I mean? So I just think that it's a great filter because it kind of contrasts our own selfishness in our own life to eternity or death or whatever. So
yeah, it's again a perspective of like putting things in the sort of like from a higher level point of view. You may be it's kind of like even like dealing with stress. You can drive yourself mad with small things that are like just little thorns in your side, whatever it may be. And that can consume you. I mean, you can be like so focused on that little tiny problem that you're going to blow it out of proportion to such humongous, scale that it just overwhelms you. And it's only when you have that capability and that tool in your tool belt where you're like, wait a second, hold on, whoop. Let's just kind of like zoom out a little bit, and then look at this from a broader perspective. It means nothing, but yet in those moments you are just consumed by it. We're swirling on this tiny little marble in space that can be hit by some kind of a massive asteroid and just put this whole thing out of business. And you're like just stressing over because you got a flat tire or something in your car or something.
Yes.
So I think it's healthy to kind of have that capability and remind yourself of that perspective of that put things in the right perspective, and you maybe not stressing out. And I think that kind of goes into what you just said as well, like, will this matter 100 years from now, to kind of give yourself that kind of perspective so you're not just and bring some humbleness too. Well, listen, Evan, this was a phenomenal conversation. I really enjoyed it. You are an awesome guest. I wish you the best of luck with whatever you do. And what is it that you want to kind of leave us out with in terms of like a shout out or a call to action for those, message that you want to kind of leave us out with?
Yeah, I definitely, I would reiterate ask yourself what matters 100 years from now for you, because if you're dreaming of being an entrepreneur, that really may not be, you might be doing that because you care about what other people think. And if you realize that that's part of the reason why you're doing it, then maybe you won't pursue it. You can do something else that'll make you even more happier and give you more from fulfillment in the end of your life. So that's the kind of parting thought. I've got a free guide on my website if you are in business or sales or marketing. It's called How to Build a Winning Sales Funnel. And it's a checklist that's basically like a Lego kit. It'll teach you how to make marketing profitable for your own company. It's totally free. It's on caffeine.marketing or evanknox.com, either one of those websites. It's just on the homepage. And I would love to connect with you if you have any questions or anything like that. So.
Excellent. We're going to put all the links and everything in the show notes as well. And check out Evan's website, caffeine.marketing. A lot of good stuff on that website that can help your business. And hopefully you enjoyed this conversation and you got something out of it. That's kind of the theme of this show, conversations with interesting people that bring in interesting value to you. So share your comments in our feed, reach out, apodcast.com. Reach out to us on social media. All the links will be at the end and in the show notes. And we're looking forward to seeing you out there speaking with us, interacting with us, bringing in new interesting guests that can share additional values to spread good and interesting things out on the internet. So thank you again for being on the show. And until next time, I'm Adrian Sinclair, and this is The Adrian Sinclair Show. See you later. Bye.
Thanks for listening to a podcast with interesting people. Please subscribe and leave a review or comment.
And support us by sharing our episodes on social media. We really appreciate it. And for more information, visit us at apodcast.com. Thanks.